So today, I'm really pleased to have my friend and former colleague, Art Cullen, join us to talk about his book, We Crapped in Our Nest, and I'm not sure if I can get that to focus. Uh, it's not going to focus. Okay. Um, there, thank you, Art. Yours is doing it. So a link is in the chat where you can purchase this book. It's published by Ice Cube Press in Iowa City, Iowa, a wonderful local publishing house that really focuses on environmental issues. I will confess a personal relationship with Art that goes back almost 40 years. If you've read his book, you will learn that he spent some time at the Globe Gazette newspaper in Mason City, Iowa, a Lee newspaper. Art appeared there at the same time I happened to be a lowly desk editor in the newsroom. Fun experience, great opportunity. Way back in my youth, I thought I wanted to be a journalist until I realized how little money you make, Art. So that kind of turned me away from
Yeah.
that profession. But I followed Art's career ever since he was called home to Storm Lake, Iowa. And you might be interested in his other book called Storm Lake, which is a pretty interesting snapshot of what has happened to small rural communities in Iowa because of the change in our agriculture. Um, Art, welcome. We're glad you're here. I'm going to turn it over to you to however you want to open this. I know you've got some comments and you also want to do a reading. And never fear, we will have plenty of time at the end for conversation. So, welcome, Art.
Well, great. Thanks, Mary Ellen. Appreciate being with everybody here today. And we're supposed to get a blizzard tonight, up, I guess, 4 inches with winds about 60 miles an hour. So that's just normal weather for Storm Lake. There's a reason they call it Storm Lake. The wind never ceases here. Uh, and a little background about myself. I grew up in Storm Lake in northwest Iowa. It's a town of about 12 to 15,000 people. We're not sure how many people live here because so many of them are immigrants. It's a meatpacking town. And so about 90% of our elementary enrollment are children of color, and about 30 languages or dialects are spoken in Storm Lake. So it's a very, very interesting small town, majority Latino and with a very large Asian population from Laos and other locales in Southeast Asia. Um, and so I grew up here, went to St. Mary's High School, and then I went off to the College of St. Thomas up in St. Paul, Minnesota, now the University of St. Thomas, where I majored in journalism. And I had this friend, Marty Case, uh, and he went up to St. John's in Collegeville, Minnesota, near St. Cloud. We were high school buddies, best buds, and he ended up writing a book, uh, The Relentless Business of Treaties, about how he screwed Native Americans out of North America. And I set out uh, in these newspaper jobs. I worked in uh, Algona, starting out with my brother John, and then Ames, Iowa, at the Ames Tribune. I was the managing editor, and then worked with Mary Ellen at the Globe Gazette as night editor, and the title describes the job aptly. Night editor. It was my year of purgatory. Um, and then in 1990, I helped my brother start the Storm Lake Times. And from the very beginning, uh, we were wondering about water quality in the Raccoon River, and we're hearing reports of high nitrate levels, blue baby syndrome, et cetera, et cetera. And so we've been reporting on nitrate in the Raccoon River and agriculture's contribution to it, for a very long time, 35 years, 36 years now. But very few people were listening to us until 2015. Uh, the Des Moines Water Works sued Buena Vista, Calhoun, and Sac counties over nitrate pollution of the drainage system that drains into the Raccoon River. And so we did a series of editorials about that lawsuit and transparency, how the defense costs of the lawsuit were being covered by the chemical companies, but nobody wanted us to know that. So we went on a campaign to find out who was paying for the defense of this lawsuit, and why can't these two sides mediate the differences between agriculture and the environment. For that, we won a Pulitzer Prize for a series of editorials in 2016 about surface water pollution in Iowa and the lack of transparency. And today, it's no better. In 2010, voters approved of a constitutional amendment to provide a permanent source for water quality revenue stream, and the legislature has ignored it and refused to appropriate the money. So that's how we got here. We won the Pulitzer. We did a documentary was done about us during the pandemic when we nearly went broke. Uh, and I did this book, Storm Lake, about growing up here and again how life has changed. Steve Semken from Ice Cube Press had been pestering me to do another book, and I blew him off. And in the meantime, Marty Case and I, my old buddy, we were fiddling around with a book uh, about how our dominion is our demise. How we took the book of Genesis and took it to its extreme in Iowa in dominating the birds of the air and fowl and fur. And we are now the most cultivated place in the world. And it's showing as our rivers are polluted, our surface waters, as our land is eroded into the Gulf of Mexico, and as our rural communities decline. And so uh, we took that idea out to these New York publishers. We wrote a sample chapter called The Corn Gospel together, and it's in this book, chapter four, and that kind of explains the history of Iowa's main crop, corn. And the New York publishers all said to us, rural doesn't sell, we aren't interested. And so we went back to Steve Semken, and he agreed to publish our book. Uh, Except by that time, Marty and I were so depressed about it. Marty dropped out of the project after our round of rejection out in New York. And so I wrote the rest of the book solo, kind of spinning essays from the newspaper that I'd written specifically with this in mind around that chapter of the Corn Gospel. I think I ought to explain where I'm coming from. The book, I hope, makes a difference in the midterm elections. I believe that Iowa is at a inflection point. We're in a crisis with our politics, our civic life, not only our politics, but our cultural life. Uh, we're shaming gays, banning abortion. We have a crisis in pollution and water quality. We're, the water is toxic with nitrate. Uh, our rural communities are dying. They literally bulldozed the main street of Pomeroy, Iowa. They just tore it down. The school just closed in early Iowa, 12 miles south of Storm Lake. Um, and so that's what this book is kind of about is how we should be in the richest place on earth, uh, but we crapped in our nest. We fouled it. And with this industrial agriculture that is just taking us backwards. And so it's kind of a depressing topic, honestly. But in the end, the book, I try to arrive at some suggestions on we know how to do things right in Iowa. We just aren't. And so I'll do just a little reading from the book to bore everybody. And then we can open it up for some questions after that. I think this little excerpt kind of sums up where my complete head is at. And it gets very difficult for me to watch what's going on in Iowa and how we're going backwards at light speed. Uh, every day the legislature is in session. And we just have to change, or this state is going down the tubes. You cannot continue to drive young people out of Iowa, humiliate blacks, Latinos, and gays, and expect to get away with it. Uh, and we're not. None of my kids want to live in Iowa because they think it's Hicksville. And you can't make a living here. So here's a little reading. It was a fine fall day as we breathed the smell of manure for 2 hours from Ames to Storm Lake. The week before, our noses told us in the dark when we hit the state line. As we looked at the bounty rolling in, we thought for the millionth time, this should be the richest place on earth. Someone else gets the money, we get the poo. Iowa ranked 30th in median household income at about $80,000 per year in 2024. That high-tax socialist Minnesota's median income is 96,000. Ours is 80,000. Minnesota's 96,000. Socialist Illinois, 95,000. Storm Lake is at 51,000. 51,000. We have the best soil, though less of it every year. We have the best climate for growing corn, especially, but it's become more extreme. We have abundant water, but we're drawing it down and fouling it. We have an elaborate infrastructure that could support people and prosperity that we are leaving to decay. We used to have a lot of brains combined with a work ethic, not afraid to get out there and hoe a row. We're chasing the brains off to Minnesota and Illinois where the money is. We're hostile to immigrants who are perfectly willing to pick up the shovel. It's not a good position for our future. Iowa is the only state with a rising cancer rate. It is second in cancer incidence to Kentucky, Tobacco Central. Iowa leads the nation in childhood respiratory illness. We're second to Wisconsin in drinking. There's enough evidence out there to tell us that nitrate in the water leads to higher rates of childhood cancer and neurological problems in adults. Research shows higher asthma rates in children around meatpacking complexes. Bayer was just hit with another verdict finding that Roundup causes cancer. Its largest investor is calling for talks with the plaintiffs. Consolidation is killing us. Now we make half as much in Storm Lake as someone in Illinois, which we like to scoff at as corrupt. Who owns Iowa? Koch Enterprises and Bayer. How do you fix pollution in the river? You don't. You tell yourself it's the price of feeding starving children in Gaza with number two yellow corn. Or is it the price of us being involved in Middle Eastern wars? You put up with such stench near Iowa Falls because Iowa Select is the only game around, so you play that game. We could have open markets, but we elect politicians who lock them up. You should be damn glad for your $50,000 in median household income. Your kid doesn't really need to go to college. So few jobs around here call for it. Yeah, we used to make twice as much, relatively speaking, but we sure are glad to be free of those union dues. The best you can hope for is a tax cut, even though you barely make enough to pay tax. Tuition in Iowa State goes up and up while state appropriations go down and down. The mechanic likes the realignment business I bring him from driving state highways. Not much road work to bother you from here to Fort Dodge. All roads lead to Des Moines, where you can barely be reached these days for all the road construction. Why would you stay in Pomeroy? The main street is about to implode, literally. It's roped off in yellow tape. And editor's note that's since been demolished. One of the buildings used to be a bank, rock solid, and these days is ready to explode into the street, which also isn't in such good shape. Oh, and they're going to tear down the old school. The chemicals were progress. So were the hog confinements and the sow sell-offs. The crop propaganda told us it was the only way to go, so we went. You can't be sure why Iowa's tops in cancer. You just can't blame the dust, we like to chuckle. But the dust is laden with ammonia and sulfide. It's what you smell near Interstate 35. If you suspect a correlation, you are anti-livestock. Were it not for ethanol and Iowa Select, we might be making a lot less than $50,000 per household. Or would we? What is causing Main Street to fall down and cause cancer rates among Iowa children to rise? Why is Iowa so much poorer than Minnesota and Storm Lake is so much poorer than Iowa? We bought the pig in the poke. Trade your independence for yoke disguised as corporate security. Now nature is calling the bluff, and it's all adding up. This has not been the best experiment at agri-industrial consolidation. If we figure out how to get back to center, we would be better off than our neighbors. We should be. We were. So on that bright note, I'd open it up to a discussion, questions, whatever Mary Ellen wants.
I told you earlier that my question was, or a comment, I guess, was I have to say, when I finished your book, I wasn't exactly encouraged. So my question is, what, and I asked this at the Harkin Institute symposium on Wednesday.
Considering that bombs are flying on Tehran right now, there is no reason to be encouraged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My question is, what will be Iowa's Dust Bowl? What will be Iowa's Cuyahoga River? What will happen that will truly jolt us to awake to this crisis?
I think we're being jolted awake Iowa style. That is slowly and quietly. Uh, we are coming awake. This past summer in Des Moines, I was at Sheslow Auditorium. It was people were packed to the rafters at Drake University to talk about anhydrous ammonia application. Over 1,000 people showed up to hear Iowa's leading scientists talk about water quality. And the reason I think that people were so upset is because uh, brain cancer is one thing, but not being able to water your lawn is quite another. And when you can't, if you have a brown lawn, that's reason to grab the pitchforks and head out into the streets. Uh, but because people were pissed off that night that they couldn't water their lawns. And then the scientists start talking about the connections with cancer. And I think even Republicans now are talking about cancer and water quality in the Iowa legislature. There's one candidate running for governor, a guy by the name of Zach Lane from Belle Plaine, is into regenerative agriculture and is wants to break up the ag oligopoly. Uh, and so it tells me that the conversation, we may be reaching that dust bowl. Uh, Maybe when uh, Pacific Junction and what was the other little community down there in southwest Iowa? They were literally washed down the river by the Missouri River. They're just Pacific Junction and Hamburg. They were both just washed
Hamburg.
away down the river. And I think that woke people up that climate change maybe is real, that the weather is getting extreme, and that we just simply can't go on when whole communities are disappearing into the river.
And in addition, the price is being paid by the consumers who have to do something about protecting their water. So a lot of households are buying reverse osmosis machines, which are not cheap. I'm told that the average cost is $1,000. And then there's maintenance costs on top. In fact, it was interesting to me. I had a friend in Des Moines who proudly showed me her countertop reverse osmosis machine, attached to her kitchen cold water tap. And I looked at it and I said, but what about the water line to the ice maker in your refrigerator? And she hadn't thought about that. So the water out of the tap went through the reverse osmosis, but the ice cubes out of her refrigerator were still not treated. So, do you think that's going to wake up enough people? The cost of, because what we've heard already is that 10 milligrams um, is not low enough. That researchers are telling us that even 5 milligrams as the top limit for nitrate in our drinking water can still produce negative health effects. What I hear what you're saying, that maybe pitchforks by urbanites who can't water their lawn. And I guess that's why I like bringing this subject to the league, because most league members are urbanites. They're not involved in agriculture. They're not out on farms. Um, so I'm going to think about that. I'm going to open up for questions, and we're small enough group that if you will just raise your hand, and you don't need to type the question in the chat, but raise your hand and ask your question directly. And I'm glad to see more people, Sherry Hawkon and
I
Sheila Wagman,
I've
Steve
got
Pulsford.
I've got a question.
Go ahead, John.
So, I recently toured the World Food Prize for the first time, and they you know, are doing all this amazing work throughout the world, but they're based in Des Moines. And when people asked about, um, you know, the fact that, half the corn we grow is being used for ethanol, they basically said, "Oh, they're supportive of that. Using of corn for energy, and you know, because there's no way all that corn could be used, to feed people." And I'm like, well, couldn't we grow other crops? And because there's a lot of hungry people in Iowa. There shouldn't be any hungry people in Iowa.
We import about 90% of our food into Iowa.
That's crazy. So, how do we awaken the World Food Prize that should have the best science, who fund the best scientists in the whole world on food production, so that they will
Well, yeah,
get them?
like everything else, because it's in Iowa, founded by Iowans, that's why it's in Des Moines. It was endowed by John Ruan of Ruan Transportation, and he was a John Ruan was a moderate corporate Republican who believed in the Iowa production system. He was a part of it as a trucker, a transportation company, and uh, that explains why the World Food Prize has kind of a corporate outlook, and uh, but it's coming along slowly. Uh, we, the last couple of years, they've given their award to people whose main work was in sustainable agriculture, a Pakistani, for example. Uh,
Yeah.
and so, yes, they have to continue to accept that ethanol is an Iowa thing because they're in Iowa, and it's almost a religious issue in Iowa. But we're also coming around to the notion that ethanol's days are numbered. Even Tom Harkin acknowledged it. Tom Harkin used to be full-throated pro-ethanol, and just in the last couple months, he said, "You know what? uh, Ethanol's days are done." And the ethanol plant at Galva just, it's closing down. It couldn't find a buyer.
Hmm.
So the market is recognizing that ethanol's days are numbered too. I drive a fully electric vehicle. The Chinese are marketing $10,000 electric cars in Canada. It isn't long before they breach the border. And so ethanol's days are numbered. and the market is going to determine that, not the World Food Prize. The market's going to determine that ethanol really doesn't have a place in the supply chain anymore. And so we've got to, in the meantime, we've got to figure out what we're going to grow in Iowa. And there's a lot of discussion to be had about that. Perennial crops, for example, there's a new perennial food crop based on wheat called Kernza, based out of the Land Institute in Salina, Kansas. So there's a lot of alternative crops that we could be talking about, but the whole system is built for corn, ethanol, hogs, soy, and also eggs, hens. So, it's unraveling that system is very complicated. For example, if you regulate the number of hog confinements in Iowa, that affects the production of pork in Storm Lake, Iowa, which affects the employment of Latinos who, without that job, would be living in squalor in Guatemala. So it's a very, very intricate ball we've wound. And we have to be careful about how we unravel it. And I think that was one of Tom Harkin's concerns was how do we get off the ethanol Jones without destroying uh, commodity markets? But now he's realized we're really poisoning the environment with this excess corn production, and we've just got to stop it. And and so we've got to come up with some solutions that help farmers wean themselves from ethanol.
Thank you. Diane,
Long answer to that question. I'm sorry.
There was lots of great
don't be sorry, Art.
information.
It's a complicated question.
Mary
It
Ellen,
deserves a long answer.
Diane is next, and after that, Tamara for
Yes,
questions. Thank
I've
you.
got it. Diane, unmute yourself.
I think I did. Yeah, I just think sometimes storytelling, like you do, Art. I grew up in Howard County, 80-acre farm.
Yeah.
My dad built a hog house. We had feeder pigs. He built a hen house. We had laying. We sold eggs. We had neighbors that we could see from our farmstead. They're gone. The cows that he had developed bangs, so he lost about 8, the whole herd. I'm just going back to how we survived, and I'm talking in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And also that when you grew up on a farm, there were people in Chicago who wanted nannies, and they wanted nannies from Iowa because the girls had such a powerful work ethic, and even the descendants of those.
And skills from the
They,
farm.
yes,
Domestic skills. Yeah, right.
yes. So that's just I just wanted to share that I grew up on a farm. I mean, I know what is involved here. So not everybody in cities are have not been exposed to what's happening on farms. And my dad rotated crops, corn, soybeans, oats, alfalfa. And you didn't grow as much corn on an acre as you do. You could see down the rows and walk down the rows. So I'm just doing some memory lane walking today.
We
Thank
do
you.
that at our age. We do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, we used to, I mean, that 160 acres would raise a family, a whole tribe of kids.
Yeah.
And, and maybe I'm being sentimental about it, but no, really, there was not a hunger problem.
There were 10 in my family.
And you never missed a meal and you had milk at the table every meal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. I don't know if it's Tam or Frank, but the Prentices
Boy, I
are
sound
online.
old.
Okay, this is Tam and Frank from Dubuque. Art, a couple questions.
Ich
First
bin a
one,
Dubuquer.
what?
Ich bin a Dubuquer. That's what Kennedy meant to say.
Oh, is that right? Well, yeah, well, that's another state of Dubuque. But anyway, two questions. On the ethanol, a comment on E15. And the other is, what is the farm? Do we have any inkling of what the Farm Bureau thinks about Trump's tariffs concerning soybeans and corn, which used to be important to the state of Iowa?
Well, E15 is just another scam by the renewable fuels industry to try and peddle their product that they can't get rid of otherwise. Even Iowans don't want to burn ethanol because they don't trust it in their cars. Uh, and I used to be hardcore pro-ethanol myself, uh, because I thought it was the only way to get out of the Middle East. Look where we're stuck, you know? And but that didn't pan out. And so I was wrong, as usual. What was the second part of your question? E15 is just, I mean,
No,
it's a nothing.
the Farm Bureau's and Trump's tariffs
Oh, okay, yeah. Well,
may affect the corn and soybean
they went
costs.
crying. They went crying. You know, they even brought Southern rednecks from Alabama, cotton growers in Arkansas to cry on at the White House uh, about how the tariffs were killing soybeans. And so they got a $12 billion bailout. We'll see where that money goes. It probably doesn't go to the bottom 30% of farmers who are actually living under the most stress. It probably goes to the top two-thirds and to JBS and Cargill and the rest of them.
But it's
But and then they were I love the name, so I have to use it. American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall was just begging in the White House again. Oh, you're bombing Iran. It's going to cause fertilizer costs to go up. Diesel's going up. What are we going to do? We're going to need another bailout. Well, okay, you voted for this bonehead. Uh, well, they're going to need another bailout, and they'll probably get one. They were talking to Farm Bureau like they get a bailout over energy costs, and we'll see. They'll probably really dump it on. Ashley Hinson will probably announce it, mid-October, uh, would
but
be
I
my
understand.
guess.
But I understand that bailout is still a small. It's what, like 30% of what farmers should normally get from private enterprise.
Yeah,
Is
but
that
the
right?
top two-thirds, everybody they keep talking about a crisis in net income in agriculture. Actually, the top third of farm, they were bidding over $30,000 an acre for land in Sioux County this year. So they're not banging down the door of the poor farm just yet. It's the bottom 30% that are really under extreme financial stress from these tariffs, energy costs, etc. Those old Dutch boys up in Sioux County are doing fine.
Okay.
Chair
Thank you.
Hawk, unmute yourself and ask your question for Art.
Hi, Art. First, I wanted to say I appreciated your mentioning my aunt and uncle Norman and Paul Smith in your in
They were the
that.
coolest people
Yes,
around. They were
yes,
cool.
they
They were
absolutely
cooler
were.
than Barack Obama. Cool before it was cool to be cool.
True, true. It very.
Where do you live?
I grew up in Albert City.
Oh,
Polka time. Yeah.
yeah, at Alberdale. You went to Alberdale.
Yeah. Exact. Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't want
Oh, that's
to.
hilarious.
I
Yeah.
digress.
The Smiths are the beautiful people.
They're
Anyway,
wonderful. I saw a bunch of them last weekend. So,
you
anyway,
didn't have a beer, did you?
no.
They do like to sip their beer.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. But I just wanted to ask if you could expound just a little bit. I was such a fan of Bill Stowe back in the day when he was filing the lawsuit against the three counties of course I have ties to all those areas,
Yeah.
and just wanted to have, if you would expound a little bit on the demise of the lawsuit and how it can't, because it seemed to me like the evidence was in, but it failed.
Correct.
Uh,
About 70% of Iowans agreed with the Des Moines Water Works position, and disagreed with Terry Branstad at the time, who said that war was just declared on rural Iowa. In fact, most people in Storm Lake are very concerned about the water quality in the lake. That's why over 70% voted for a bond issue to clean up Storm Lake. And over 70% would vote for a bond issue to clean up the Raccoon River, too, and the Mississippi, if you let them, but they'll never let them. And that's that's the deal. They stacked the Iowa Supreme Court so that that lawsuit, even if you were right on the facts, you were bad on the law, and they were going to make sure of it. And they did. They were going to make sure that women were regarded as second-class citizens. That was the whole idea of stacking the courts, and they did it. And so within a week of each other, they're saying you cannot regulate agriculture, and there is no right to an abortion in Iowa. And it was a 50-year campaign to load the courts, to take over the universities, and to stack the legislature in the favor of the Koch brothers, and it worked. And here we are. That's why the Waterworks lawsuit failed. It was not on its merits. Everybody in Iowa knows we're killing the Gulf of Mexico. Everybody knows we're running the world's largest nitrate removal facility in Des Moines. Everybody knows that the Saylorville Reservoir has toxic blue-green algae and is unsafe even to drink through filters. The Des Moines water treatment system can't handle it. We all know that, and we all know it's not coming from golf courses. Furthermore, just this week they were talking to the Iowa legislature. Gee, we're not sure really what's causing this cancer. The bullshit. They know what's causing the cancer. My urologist knows why I have prostate cancer. She says we're bathing in farm chemicals, and you did up in Albert City, and but nobody wants us to really be talking about that. Well, we got a hypoxia task force, and by God, we're doing good work. You know what? The dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico is not shrinking. Okay, there are no cover crops around Albert City. Uh, there aren't, and you can drive across the state and not see a cow on pasture because now we just have hogs and hens in confinement. That's the way they want it. The fewer people on the land, the better. So the sooner you move out of Albert City and down to Des Moines, the better off the corporate ag cabal is, because people just get in the way.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Other questions? I don't see any hands up. I want to go back to, I'm waiting for other questions, or to John Olson's comment about the food prize. Isn't Tom Vilsack now head of that?
Yes, he succeeded Ken Quinn, a former ambassador to
And
Cambodia.
Ken had been there a very long time. I
Right.
think he was the founding executive director. Tom, former governor of Iowa, then went on to head up the Dairy Association
Yep.
lobbying group. Um, uh, what do you see as possible as opposed to probable in terms of what he might do in this new position? Because I think to me, he's conflicted, right? He got a pretty big paycheck working for the dairy lobby, significant dollars. Who also, we don't talk about it much in Iowa, but there are dairies in Iowa. There's a very large one near me that its manure mountain is literally a mountain. And it's so far in the boondocks, you have to drive on back roads to even find the place. But they do exist in Iowa, and they're contributing to the pollution. Is there any hope for the food prize coming out with a bully pulpit?
Well, I think for them to recognize sustainable agriculture in any way is a big deal, I think. And I'm not an apologist for Tom Vilsack. Uh, he was he was the best agriculture secretary you could hope for, given the circumstances. Barack Obama was not any kind of left-wing socialist. He was a corporate Democrat. So was Joe Biden. They were corporate Democrats, just like Hillary Clinton. And Tom Vilsack would have was the perfect Secretary of Agriculture for those administrations, and he would have been a perfect Secretary of Agriculture for President Clinton, Hillary Clinton. Uh, that's just who he is. He and Tom Harkin are not the same people, and so I don't begrudge Tom Vilsack. I think he will try and nudge the World Food Prize along to a more on a more sustainable ag path and to a more holistic view of food production. I really do believe that. I think he's a good person. He takes a lot of crap from the left wing of the Iowa Democratic Party because he's a corporate ag guy. But what would you expect? I mean, honestly, coming up, what would you expect in Iowa when you're funded by the John Ruan family? Uh, I mean, we expect too much. And so I don't even think about the World Food Prize, really. I think about who's the governor of Iowa and who sets the tone in this state. And that's why it's so essential. For the first time since 1960, I'm making a segue here in case you didn't notice. For the first time since 1968, we have open races for the
Yep.
U.S. Senate and Iowa governor. It is absolutely vital that we change directions in Iowa this midterm election, that we elect somebody different. That we've been going back light years in this state. Again, shaming gays, blacks, native people, telling Mexicans they're not welcome here, shaming gays, taking rights away from trans people, and just to make sure that if the city council tries to allow you any rights, you can't have them. And I mean, what is this? Where are we going? How did we get there? Uh, we used to just whisper quietly about gays in Iowa. We didn't harass them. We weren't mean necessarily. At least not in my experience. I'm sure if I were gay, I'd probably have a different perspective about it. I'm sure I would. But we weren't just being openly hateful the way we are now. We weren't being openly hateful toward Mexicans. When I was growing up, itinerant Mexicans would stay and would camp in the roller skating rink while they
Yeah.
slaughtered turkey seasonally. And we didn't bear them any ill will. They were truly immigrants. They weren't documented in any way except by the man. And so anyway, I'll stop my rant. Uh, but
Not
we've got to
inappropriate.
go in a different direction in this state because our kids are bailing on us, and there's going to be nobody left to do our dirty work once we chase out all the Mexicans. There is a hell of a dairy industry in Iowa, up in northwest Dutch country,
Yeah.
Sioux County. And up there, Ron DeSantis comes up there grilling pork chops. Who the hell does he think cut those pork chops while he's bad mouthing immigrants? They were cut in Storm Lake, Iowa by Guatemalans, Mexicans, Venezuelans, Cubans, and who the hell ever else. And Ron DeSantis, pretty little white boy up there, bad mouthing immigrants alongside Randy Feenstra, and there's room in hell for all of them. That's what I say.
Thank you, Art. Nancy Porter, Iowa City. Unmute yourself, dear.
Thank you.
Jump
Yes,
in
and
there.
thank you for being with us today and being the kind of people that we are that want to go ahead. I had a comment that March 1st, Des Moines Register had some great articles about our water. And not only um, talking about these saturated buffers. Now, as part of the Upper Mississippi River region, we had a presentation from an Illinois person who was very concerned about our environment. And he stated in Illinois, he was working on just a 75-foot runoff area before any of this stuff got to any source of water. And here our buffers are not working. Would 75 feet runoff areas help somewhat with our problem?
Anything would help, anything. But a 75-foot buffer ain't going to do the trick. I mean, there's research done by a MacArthur genius, Dr. Lisa Schulte Moore at Iowa State University, stating that if you planted 10% of a gently sloping field to native plantings, it would reduce nitrate outflow to the rivers by 90%. Plant 10% to reduce nitrate 90%. How many native plantings have you seen in Iowa fields? If you talk about a 10% set aside, uh, like we used to have in Iowa, back when we could support a family on 160 acres, when we had a 10% set aside under the Farm Bill, we did not have a water quality problem in Iowa. We really didn't. And we didn't have the cancer problem that we have today either. But if you suggest it today, it's like a religious issue with people. You can't talk about a set aside. That's, you know, that's just craziness. We have to plow right up into the river because, when corn's so cheap, what the hell else are you going to do? So, we don't really care if we're killing the Gulf of Mexico or suffocating the shrimping industry in the Gulf, so long as we get our 200 bushel corn, because that's what the banker tells us that we got to get.
Yeah.
And as far as that set aside, then somebody's got to pay the farmers for setting that aside and helping
That's right.
plant. And that again is just a government, not just, but a government issue that we're not willing to put the money into.
But you see I always think I'm going to be the last man standing, right? And so these guys think if I can get control over another couple hundred acres, I'll be the last man standing, and I'll farm every damn inch of it to pay off the debt because I'm going to be. That's how it works. That's the psychology. Is I'm going to get rich, just like Trump. I'm going to be the last man standing here, and I'm going to be master of this dominion. Well, it never works out that way. That last man standing went broke during the farm crisis,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Mickey Coyle, our board member from St. Louis. Mickey, here's your stuff.
Yeah, I have to say that Missouri's just
Sorry,
as bad as
Mickey, about
Iowa.
all the shit we're dumping down your way, but we'll
But
clean it
we're
up
contributing
eventually.
as well. We're trying so hard to make small inroads, and we're finding the corporate capture is worse than anything in terms of permitting and regulations. And no matter what we do, we can't get them to add public representation. It's always somebody that has 10% associated with corn or something like that. Oh, that's a public representing. It's only 10%. Right. Any suggestions?
No, I'm flummoxed. The Des Moines Waterworks lawsuit made it clear that the government is not interested in clean water or air
Right.
for that matter. And so other than restacking the courts, which is going to take another 50 years,
Yeah.
uh, honestly, I just don't know what the answer is other than getting off our asses and taking our government back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And making the connections between, you know, we're all sucking off that corporate tit, and we've got to make the connections that by doing so, we're fouling our entire state.
Okay. Yeah, we have
Uh,
worse, the judges are worse here, and the judge just ruled that the revised redistricting, which takes Kansas City out of the Democrat, and by making the district all the way across the state, just about halfway through the state, a small sliver, so that
so
it's Republican.
common sense, moderate politics needs to win so big
Yeah,
that it
yeah.
suffocates this madness that we're going through right
Yes.
now. And so we've got to pray for moderation. And let's just let that be our goal. We need a two-party system in America. We need one in Iowa. We need a two-party system in Iowa in the worst way. That would
Right.
solve 90% of our problems if we just
Yeah.
if we just weren't radical. We've got to moderate ourselves.
Yeah.
Another question from the Prenisel household.
Yeah, Art, Frank, and Tam again. What goes through my mind is, I guess your operation, your field is publicate newspapers, and I'm thinking maybe there, because so many of these people just get their news from Fox News, or a lot of these people are working two jobs. They don't have a lot of interest or time to look at what's going on out there in publications, except watching Fox
They have a
News the
lot
other
of
day.
time to watch porn and shit. Why can't they watch? Why can't they read a newspaper? I don't
Well,
buy it.
well, I'm getting to the, maybe there should be a free newspaper that's given to these people. Put a little ads in there, but
That's a great way to go broke.
well, I know it, but I'm willing to give some money to that.
Well, that's what people say. I
You know,
appreciate it. I honestly do, and I don't, and I'm sorry to diminish it, but we are barely making it, and we're
Yeah.
trying as hard as possible, and we're barely making it because people don't want to part with a dime for democracy. And so in the meantime, Sheldon Adelson is buying it and taking it over. Well, his widow is, and the Kochs and Jeff Bezos. And so I'm not buying it that people don't have the money to
well,
afford it. It's just not true.
well, I'm thinking of not necessarily through a newspaper, more of it's just a well, maybe like a farmer's almanac or something outside the regular
What I'm trying to tell
newspapers.
you is that the free press is dying before our eyes. I'm
Yeah.
the last vestige of independent ownership. Lee Enterprises is scaling. The Sioux City Journal, I think, prints 2 days a week now, maybe. We have a bigger staff than the Waterloo Courier does. We have a bigger news staff than the Waterloo Courier does. The free press is dying, and they're trying to extinguish it. We need to devote resources to journalism that defends democracy and informs democracy. And I'm preaching, but I don't buy it when people say we can't afford a free press. Well, then you can't afford democracy.
Where I'm coming from, though, is when I see these elections, myself hiring somebody just to put out a
I'm telling you, I'm
four
trying to tell
page
you, we're
pamphlet.
going broke. BROKE, broke. I
Yeah.
can barely afford to keep the doors open. We can't afford the staff we have. And we're losing advertisers left and right. And with it, you're going to lose democracy unless you support journalism, and we are not supporting journalism. You can, through the Western Iowa Journalism Foundation, you can send a donation. You can subscribe to the Storm Lake Times. You should subscribe to the Des Moines Register. You should send a donation to Iowa Capital Dispatch. Tremendous operation. But we are starving out here, And now they're trying to take legal notices away from us in the Iowa legislature. And you're saying, well, what do you need that for? That's a lot of money to spend where our property taxes are already too high. Well, it's $13,000 for the city of Storm Lake on a $77 million budget. So they can read the public notices, including salaries, bills paid, council minutes. And people think that's too expensive. Okay, well, welcome to the Reichstag.
Well, we have the elections coming up. How do we get the information to these people before they vote? If they're not reading newspapers, like, is there some kind of a thing that we can get out there to people? I mean, I donate to that. Not maybe
It's
a
called the
newspaper, some
Dubuque
kind of
Telegraph
brochure.
Herald, yeah, and tell write letters to the editor, send a donation to the Dubuque Telegraph Herald. This is how do we reach people? Hell, I don't know. That's my problem. I can't reach paying customers. How can we do it? I don't know. Maybe through
Yeah.
book clubs.
Okay. A lot of people, though, as you
It
say,
gets
are
me
not.
agitated when people say that we can't afford democracy. The hell we
Okay.
can't.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't see any other hands up.
See, I
wanted
see
to
a
go.
comment here. Paper legal notices are a scam. I tell you what, a lot of our 80-year-old readers, they don't know how to run a website or a cell phone. They depend on a printed product that we provide
Right.
with legal notices so they know the minutiae of how their government operates. People with that sort of attitude is why we're going broke and why our democracy is faltering in the face of a tyrant.
So,
Links in the chat so you can subscribe to the Storm Lake Times. I
so
also support Art's admonition to subscribe to the Des Moines Register and the Iowa Capital Dispatch.
Karen
Axios
Sievers
is
has a
another
question.
presence in Iowa that has good reporting as well. Thank you. Stephanie is reminding us that the third Friday, the Metro Des Moines League has coffee at Nadio's. It's at 9:30 if you want to collect. I'm told, I don't live in Des Moines, but I'm told that that's quite a widely discussion group if you want to show up. I want to address Frank's concern, Art, because Frank, I do think there's an answer, as Art has stated. There's an election coming up. And Iowa has a rare opportunity, as Art pointed out, that we have an open governor's seat and an open federal Senate seat. And if you don't want to throw your money at journalism, throw your money at candidates who support your values and who are advocating for clean water. I will tell you a recent personal experience. I worked hard to get Julie Stouch's name on the ballot to run for governor because her top issue was Iowa's water quality. And I would sit outside a Hy-Vee and I wore a sign that said, "Vote clean water," to help get her signatures. And people would say, "What's this about?" And I said, "I'm supporting a candidate who supports clean water. I'll sign." I had to say, "Wait a minute, I want to make sure you know what you're signing," to make sure. But people were just eager to support clean water. It's an issue that resonates. And I think we all need to commit to supporting candidates who are running on that issue, like Chris Jones for Secretary of Agriculture. I'm looking to see if there are any other last minute hands up.
Karen Sievers said she had a question.
Thank you. 30 years ago, I served on the board of the American Lung Association of Iowa. And that was my first experience of the effects of agri-corporations, because we had a representative from the ethanol plant come in with giving us all the research on it, asking for the Lung Association to give our appreciate. I mean, they wanted to adopt for us to adopt their language, and we said, well, before we become involved with this, we will do our research. Needless to say, even 30 years ago, we never gave the okay to put our name with any publication that had to do. with ethanol. So now we have, I will move into what my concern is. If agribusiness is controlling everything, and we know it's controlling the Republican Party, are there any young politicians that you see coming up that will see environment as one of the main topics for policy?
Yes. I think there are. I just met a young guy over in Davenport, Adam Fitzgerald, I believe was his name, who's running for State House. This Sarah Trone Garriott is very
Yeah.
exciting from the Des Moines area, running for Congress. Uh, Mary Ellen mentioned Chris Jones running for Secretary of. He's not young necessarily, but he's certainly the most vocal advocate for water quality in the state, I believe. And yes, I think there are young people, but it's very frustrating. For example, J.D. Schulten is probably not going to run for the legislature again because who wants to be a minority member of the Iowa House your entire career?
Yeah.
It's tough, but there are young people coming up, and there are young farmers too who are looking at the landscape differently than their fathers did. And it used to be 100 people would show up at a field day for the Practical Farmers of Iowa Sustainable Ag Group. Now you'll get hundreds and hundreds, 1,000 at a farm at a field day. So they are paying attention. It's just again Iowa moves at glacier speed, and change it takes a long time. Look at how long it took for Harold Hughes to rise to the fore. It took, you know, 60 years of Republican politics for Harold Hughes to come out of Western Iowa. So there is hope. It's just hard to see on a foggy day in March.
Right. Thank you.
Last thoughts from the participants. We're going to wrap this up. A reminder, lots of good information in the chat. You can buy Art's book through Ice Cube Press. And Art, do you have any events coming up that you want to tell us about? I know you're on the speaking circuit pretty heavily.
Well, actually, we'll be at the Ames Public Library on March 23rd, and I'll be in conversation with this MacArthur genius, Dr. Lisa Schulte Moore, who came up with the research on prairie strips. And she's really a lot more interesting than I am. And so if you're in the Ames area, and I don't think people have heard enough from her.
And what time is that, Art?
7
That's coming
p.m. at
up
the
next
Ames Public Library.
7
That's the
o'clock,
23rd.
Ames Public Library next Monday.
7 p.m. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I'll be also I'm speaking at the University of Northern Iowa coming up here in March, and that's the 26th. I'll be speaking at UNI, and I'm sorry I don't know the time, but you can Google UNI's events, and they'll have that there.
Is
And
it
then
daytime or evening, Mart?
it's evening,
Okay.
and then Des Moines Book Festival is coming up in May. On May 2nd, we'll be speaking at the Des Moines Book Festival. So that's kind of a big deal for me. Go to town down there in Des Moines, like they say.
Good. Good. Well, I've got those. We'll help bless that
Thanks,
information up.
everybody.
So,
Thanks, everybody.
again, thank you, Art, for joining us. A plug, if you're not a member of your local league, please sign up. Help us continue to do this good work of educating our membership. And also check out the UMR website for lots of good information separate topic, but also affecting water quality that's affecting a lot of us in the upper Midwest, are the placement of data centers. A lot of concern about those. So if that's a topic you're interested in, the Elmer website has tons of information. And the state of Minnesota and also Michigan are working really hard on that topic. So pay attention to another issue surrounding our water quality. Thank you all for attending. Thank you to John Olson and Gretchen Sable for being our tech people. We're delighted to have you with us today, Art. Keep up the good work. Keep us posted so on where you're going to be. We will share it on our league website. Thank you all for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the day before the blizzard hits tomorrow.